This is Weekend Mornings on 980 CKNW.
It is a -1 degree Saturday morning with a bunch of fog around Metro Vancouver. Nice to have you with us as we wake up together on this December weekend. Big story, one of the biggest stories south of the line this week was the antitrust suit launched by the federal government of the United States, the Federal Trade Commission. Specifically, that's the department of the government that is spearheading the Facebook lawsuit, but they are joined by 47 states. The bottom line of the suit, basically the government of all the states alleging Facebook has abused its dominance in the digital marketplace, and it is engaged in anti-competitive behavior. They're looking specifically at the acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp over the past few years, pointing to that was a tactic that they say now was designed to crush the competition. And for its part, of course, Facebook has not had a lot to say about this, but a lot of people are pointing out that, wait a second, the application to buy Instagram and WhatsApp several years ago, both of those were approved by the same branch of the government that's now coming after the company to try to break it up. So a little confusion around all of this, and a massive amount of money and an enormous corporation involved. To help us sort it all out, we are delighted to welcome back Robert Burko. Mr. Burko is the CEO of Elite Digital and joins us from Toronto. Rob, good morning. Welcome back. Great to have you with us again.
Good morning and happy holidays, Sterling. Always glad to start off the weekend with you.
Well, it's great to have you with us, too. Now, what did you make of all of this? No surprises. It's sort of been bubbling on the back burner for a while, but once it was launched, they came with all guns blazing, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, this was go big or go home in its finest. I mean, this was a groundbreaking scenario. I mean, this is actually a big moment in time because the outcome of this is going to have some really big factors. Because Facebook is not the only behemoth that is sort of in this boat. And essentially, this is talking about taking the biggest social network on the planet and trying to unravel it. And I can't even imagine what it would look like to take the most complicated puzzle 10 years, almost a decade after some of these acquisitions that I'm talking about, and trying to unravel it. This is going to be a long, drawn-out battle, but this is going to be a landmark case. This is going to have far-reaching implications. That's not only going to impact every one of your listeners, but literally everybody around the globe.
Well, and Facebook is certainly the test case here in North America, but there's also there's Australia is involved in all of this right now. They're going after Alphabet, Google, under similar types of lawsuits. And again, the Australians are also pointing to sites and organizations, Robert, like Facebook and Google and others, which many people use as news sources. And of course, there's a lot of money going around in terms of news sources, and nobody's paying any taxes. These are enormous corporations, and you're quite right. The whole world is watching. So what's the next step? Once we've had the formal announcement by the Federal Trade Commission and the Attorneys General of dozens of states, the suit has been filed. We're still waiting, I guess, officially for Facebook to respond, aren't we?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone can brace themselves for a very long, drawn-out battle. Facebook is not going to roll over here, and there's a lot of interesting things at play. Like if you're sitting there at Facebook, and again, I am not defending Facebook at all. We all know Facebook has done some very shady stuff. The Cambridge Analytica scandal was not that long ago.
Right.
In my mind, they sort of broke the social contract. We as consumers, we sort of knew we were giving them our private data, but we trusted them to take care of that, and they violated that trust, and that's a big deal, and that sort of left some scars. But as we look about what's happening here, if the general narrative is Facebook is too big, then where does this lead us? If Facebook is too big, and Facebook does run Instagram, they do run WhatsApp, and these are some of those popular networks.
Sure.
But if Facebook is too big, is Google too big? Because I check my email and that's Google. I do a search online and that's Google. If I go watch something on YouTube, that's also Google. So is Google too big? And by that token, if Google's too big, I guess we have to say Amazon is too big. People don't even realize how many things Amazon owns.
That's true.
The big gaming platform, streaming platform, Twitch, is owned by Amazon. IMDb, if you want to go look at the top 100 movies, that's Amazon getting more of your data. And if we're going to put Amazon into that bucket, I guess we have to put Apple in that bucket. And if we're going to put Apple in that bucket, I guess we have to put Microsoft in that bucket. So this is actually going to be a very interesting case because while Facebook is certainly not the poster child for proper privacy controls, which is fundamentally what I think the conversation should be about. That's what the social conversation should be about. How are they taking care of our private data? This is going to have big implications because if we start saying how big is too big, and even if it was approved 10 years ago, which it was, and that's going to be what Facebook keeps hearing.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be, hey, guys, 10 years ago, you said this was okay. What do you mean after 10 years of us investing in this platform, now it's not okay? This is going to have far-reaching implications across the entire tech sector because there are a few big giants that run most of the show.
Indeed, and the Europeans have been onto this, Rob, as well. In fact, the Europeans have been chipping away at Facebook and Google more aggressively than perhaps any other region on the planet. Not very successfully, but they've been more aggressive about their displeasure with the size of these corporate giants. And I think the fact is that there aren't many people who participate in any social media these days who don't completely understand that once you involve yourself in any of these platforms, you basically accepted their invitation for you to join, and they will take whatever information you give them and do with it exactly as they please.
Yeah, so fundamentally, everyone needs to understand they signed up for a deal, and they didn't know what that deal was. But the deal was, we're going to, Facebook and all the other platforms. And again, I'm an active Instagram user, WhatsApp user, and Facebook user.
Sure.
So I'm part of this. And the deal is basically, we're all going to use your platforms, and we're going to use it for free. No one listening to this right now is paying to use Facebook, is paying to use WhatsApp. I frequently, multiple times a day, I'm sending WhatsApp messages to my friends and family. I'm on Instagram all the time, and I'm paying nothing for that.
Right.
And nothing is a pretty good price tag.
You bet.
That's the price tag of free. What everyone has to realize is the price tag isn't actually free. What you're doing is you're saying, I'll use your platform for free. In exchange, I'll give you my data. And then all these platforms can turn around and use your data to basically monetize the platform and make money. And that's essentially the deal. And a lot of people who use these platforms don't necessarily know that's the deal. And that's why even as I read about these landmark cases, my focus continually goes to, should we be talking about privacy controls and what you're doing with that data and how you safeguard that data? My big question, when I saw this giant lawsuit was, would we rather have them focus on the data protection and what are you doing with my information as one big company, or I'm going to split you up into 3 little companies, but it's still a wild west with my data? There's going to be a lot of interesting conversations that stem from this, and it has a big implication because I know myself and everybody else, while we may love these platforms, and we absolutely do, we want to make sure they're treating our data with the sensitivity it needs, because if that's the social contract, we'll give you our information, you take care of it, and we're all going to be in a symbiotic relationship. That can't suddenly turn into an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And those European countries and the FTC and all these sort of states are saying, hey, wait a second, something here isn't adding up. And if you're not taking care of our data and you're squashing the competition and you're a giant that can't be touched, we got to have a conversation about it. It's just going to be an awkward conversation because 10 years ago, we gave it the big thumbs up.
Yeah, and I suppose then it could be some people seeing this as almost missing the mark. Hey, wait a second, it's about my data and my right to my privacy about my data that apparently you don't completely understand, having joined Facebook and surrendered most of those rights. Nonetheless, a lot of people are going to go, it really should be about data privacy, and rather than this monopoly, this antitrust, a huge mega corporation busted up into smaller units and then deal with privacy details. I think it's all part of the same package, Rob, don't you?
Absolutely. I think it's all one and the same. I just, I always want to steer the conversation towards what affects us, the people, right? Now, there's real merit into monopolies are bad. There's problems. There's no doubt about it. There's ample information on how monopolies affect the economy, no doubt about it. But I think as the average person out there looking at this, I think what they need to know is these giant corporations, we're entrusting them with a lot of data. What are they doing with it?
Yeah,
How protected is it?
Yeah,
These corporations know more about us than we know about ourselves.
No question about that, and that's the spookiest element of it all. Robert Burko back with us. Robert is the CEO of Elite Digital, joining us on the line from Toronto. Robert, we're going to take a quick news break here, and we'll get right back to the second half of this conversation, the big antitrust Facebook lawsuit.
This is Weekend Mornings on 980 CKNW.
Which Julie Wong, I'm Stirling Faux. It's a -1 degree Saturday morning, a little foggy around Metro Vancouver, lots of sunshine in the forecast later today. The big story, one of the big stories from south of the line this week, was the group of United States Attorneys General, 48 of them, leading an antitrust lawsuit against Facebook. This is done on Wednesday. The Federal Trade Commission joined with a separate suit, basically saying these companies need to be broken up. They're talking about the squelching of competitors by simply buying them up. Antitrust tactics. Facebook, the largest social network in the world, 2.7 billion monthly active users across its 4 apps: Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp. One of the more frequent users of many of those platforms is our guest, Robert Burko, CEO of Elite Digital in Toronto. Robert, back with us on the program today. Take a look at this massive lawsuit and your concern, and I think a lot of people who are still trying to wrap their heads around all of this, Robert, is personal data. That's what's the core of all of this. The fact that, and they were very upfront about it, no surprises here. We've always known that these companies exist to gather information about us and to sell it to people who want it, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say, I love to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And the reality is these big companies have that big responsibility. There is something to be said for housing the world's data. That is not a small statement. That's a big statement. They house the world's data.
Yep.
I often talk to people, we do a lot of marketing on these platforms, and I'll speak at different events, and people will say, I feel like my phone is sometimes listening to me. And I say, it's not that your phone is listening to you. It's that these big giant corporations have so much data on you, and they're tracking so many things: what you say, what you do, who you're friends with, what they're doing. All of that data is there that they can anticipate your behavior.
Oh. Did we just lose a Zoom connection there, Julie? We'll have to double check that one, because I think what Robert is saying is absolutely 100% correct, by the way. I suppose it always surprises us. For example, when we start receiving targeted advertising that's very specifically about things that we like, and they pop up when we least expect them. And that's simply a byproduct of the information data mining that's being done at all times about us, and being sold to whoever is the customer du jour, and having it bounced right back at us in record time. So that's the part. It's the ability to not only gather the information, but synthesize it and target it right back at you in sometimes just unbelievably record time. We got Robert back. Good stuff. Rob,
yeah, no, absolutely. I believe I'm with you here. And on that, I mean, what you have to realize is what they're doing, and it's really interesting, and as your audience and as people, we should know this. They're taking raw data, they're turning that data into insights, and with those insights, they can be predictive about what we want.
Yep.
And we know that's happening. We know.
Oh, we've lost him again. Rob, your Zoom connection is starting to break down on us a little bit, and that's unfortunate, because this is big stuff, and we're gonna double up on the backup on the connection. Okay, fair enough. By the way, Facebook is calling this revisionist history. We were saying earlier that we're waiting for them to respond, and they haven't done a lot of responding yet, but they do. So far, their lawyers have said General Counsel Jennifer Newstead called the FTC lawsuit revisionist history. Again, as Rob and I were discussing a few moments ago, the reason that they're calling it revisionist history is that the commission suing them to break them up was the same commission that approved the acquisition of WhatsApp and Instagram on separate occasions, years and years apart, with billions of dollars in the equation both times. And so now, after having approved the acquisitions twice, the commission's now going to try and basically reverse their decision. So the official response from Facebook so far, 2 words: revisionist history, Rob. And they're probably going to stay with that tactic pretty strongly all the way through.
So that's fundamentally going to be their argument, and maybe the powers that be at Facebook are listening right now and butt me off the call right there. So anything is possible. They have a lot of power, and maybe we're seeing them flex that power right now.
Maybe, huh?
Well, maybe that could be, could be what's happening. But what we have to realize is their argument is going to be that, right? And this is why it sets a big precedent. if we, if a company, any company goes to the FCC and says, hey, we want to do this, and here's all the information, and again, that's not like a quick snap of the fingers process. They jump through a lot of hoops to say, yep, this is okay.
Right.
We looked at everything. We approve this merger. Now, almost a decade later, to say, you know what, actually, guys, we want to do over. We don't like that. If you're on the Facebook side, and again, I'm not defending Facebook, but if you're on the Facebook side, you're sitting there saying, we've invested billions of dollars in growing these platforms.
Yeah.
The platforms today are different than they were. If we all think back, if we could all take a jump in our time machine and go back in time, when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, the narrative was, these guys are crazy. What is going on here? $1 billion. Everybody, the whole social narrative was, Facebook, you've lost your mind. This is crazy.
That's right.
And we've all forgotten that was the narrative, because now suddenly, here we are a decade later, after making fun of them for making this acquisition, to now say, you know what, guys, that acquisition that we were all laughing at your stupidity about, turns out you were brilliant. Turns out that maybe was a smart move, but it was so smart, and you've grown this to be so big, and now we're actually concerned about the size, and we're concerned that because you're so big, you're stifling competition.
Yeah. And
instead of inviting other people to potentially create other social networks, which is a very big challenge to do, they're saying that you're buying up the competition and you've gotten too big that it hurts sort of the general landscape. But Facebook's going to keep on saying, we asked for permission, you said yes. If my kids ask me if they can have candy, and I say, sure, you have candy, and then I turn around and I got candy coming out of their mouth, I can't be like, whoa, where did that candy come from? They're going to be like, Dad, what are you talking about? I asked, you said yes, equals passive.
Interesting analogy. Rob, how do you think this is going to end? A, I agree with you that it's going to take forever, but how do you think it's going to end?
So first of all, I think it's going to take forever, so I think the end is very far away. So
Sure.
I'll make this prediction now, and years from now, we can see if I'm right. I actually think what's going to happen is they're going to say it's simply too big to untangle. So right now, the FCC is trying to weave this conversation, and rightfully so, that there's three different products here. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, and there's WhatsApp.
Right.
However, I think what Facebook is going to turn around and say is actually these may be three different points of engagement, but it's all one platform. Advertisers who are using these platforms are advertising across Facebook and Instagram in singular campaigns. So I think the idea of we can't unravel this because they are put together. In the morning, if I make a smoothie for breakfast and I put a bunch of fruits in the blender and I blend it all together, you can't tell me afterwards, can you please separate these fruits out? It's all together. It's all mashed together.
Right.
And the inner workings of what's happening there at Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, these things are so intertwined that even if they decided tomorrow, you know what, guys, you do have to unravel this, I don't even know if that's a possibility. And I think the argument is going to be, even if you want us to unravel it, it simply can't be done by virtue of how intertwined they are. And it may take another decade or longer to try to unravel it. And it's going to be interesting to see, because my real prediction is this is going to turn into a conversation about the data privacy and data protection far more than it is going to be about monopoly.
And I hope you're right, Rob. I hope that you and I, as we continue our relationship across the country on these weekend mornings, get to talk more about the focus on data privacy and personal privacy, because, boy, it's a pretty precious commodity that it's becoming even more and more rare as time goes by. Thank you for this morning. I appreciate your humor and your take on all of this, and I agree with you. We're in for quite a long ride with this one.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you, sir. All the best. Stay safe.
Robert Burko is CEO of Elite Digital, joining us from Toronto on a variety of platforms, as it turns out this morning. It's